On today's show, is Team USA done?
And the next update, will Luka Doncic be in the next home run derby?
Coming up But really, we're going to dive into Spencer Dinwiddie, free agency option for the Dallas Mavericks. We'll get into that on today's Locked On Mavs.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good!
And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and coordinator for the Locked On Podcast Network. And joining me, as always, my co-host, contributor at Mavs.com. The free agency foe, the one more thinking. What you got for me, Isaac Harris?
Mavrello has brilliant idea.
Oh, your soundboard. It's amazing. It's the best thing that's ever happened to this podcast, besides the Mavs Academy Awards. But
you ready for the newest one?
The new sound or new Mavs Academy?
New sound. It's a video that dropped today. The Mavs release.
You idiot! You idiot!
That's incredible. When we have
how many options? How many different uses can we get out of this?
You idiot!
Mark Cuban saying, "You idiot."
When we get Cuban back on, you got to play it. You got to play that soundbite.
What are you? Who are you?
We just have a whole soundbite of clips from him. But
you idiot!
So we both kind of watched the home run derby. You watched more of the home run derby tonight. I did. I watched a little bit of it. I'm at this weird stage in baseball. I just don't know the people. And it's weird. It's weird for me because I probably grew up watching baseball more than I did NBA. And now I'm just this dude, like the second batter I've seen, his last name is Olsen. I'm like, are you kin to Mary-Kate and Ashley? Are you? I don't know who you are. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to watch Joey Gallo because he's a Texas Ranger. And he sucked. So
he did suck. His pit hit the whatever assistant coach that was like throwing at him was not doing well. So go listen to Locked On Rangers and Bryce Patrick for all your Rangers takes.
Honestly, I only tuned in. I just wanted to see Ohtani. So
same. And
he's the only guy that's drawing me to baseball right now.
That first round was pretty fun with him. All that was fun. Pete Alonso going off. I mean, that was fun to watch. But
there's your baseball talk, guys.
That's all the baseball talk you're gonna get, probably for the whole year from us. On today's show, today's episode is brought to you by Michelob Ultra. 2.6 carbs, 95 calories. It's only worth it if you enjoy it. Stay tuned for the Ultra Player of the Week coming up later in the episode. Today, we're gonna dive into Spencer Dinwiddie as our free agency profile. We're gonna get into the 6'5" guard. He is going to be a free agent, and he's turning down his player option, and he seems like an option for the Mavericks if they're looking for another secondary creator. So we really are going to try to dive into some of the strengths, weaknesses, some of the problems he may solve for the Mavericks, roster fit, his availability, price, all that kind of stuff we'll get into. But first, we want to quickly talk about Team USA because they lost to Australia. Stein had an incredible tweet that from 1999 to 2000, or like 1999 to 2020 or 2019, Team USA was 54-2 in exhibition games. 54, and then the last week they're 0-2, like insane. And I think that there's all kinds of takes that are being thrown around. Team USA is done, all that kind of stuff. But I think that there is some constructive things that we can have and talk about from an NBA perspective that leads back to the Mavericks too, and Luka and all this. The NBA is different now, right? Like the NBA is so different. Guys are hunting fouls all the time. Guys are trying to create contact. They're trying to just, like, there's so many plays. I think Cranjis McBasketball tweeted a bunch of these.
I love those tweets. Yeah.
Yeah. All these different tweets of guys like trying to hunt fouls and even hunting fouls off of screens and like weird stuff that they're doing that just doesn't fly with FIBA rules and international rules. And when they have to just put the basketball down and like actually play basketball, sometimes they get pulled out of the game a little bit because scoring is unnecessary in the NBA. Like you just have to score. Defense is kind of optional because of there's so many rules that take away the defender's power, where those rules aren't necessarily there in the NBA. Things like the Kawhi closeout rule, right? We saw that real BS Brook Lopez flagrant foul in game 2 of the finals, and
Kevin Love's not getting that call.
Kevin Love's not getting that call in FIBA. So it's been really interesting to see some of these highlights and clips and to think about how you have to adapt. And it honestly makes me more impressed with Luka, right? Like, so impressed that he can like vacillate between the two different versions of basketball and be so good with these FIBA rules, and then also come back and be so good with these NBA rules. Like, he's a genius, right? Like, there's just something about him that he's able to just like adapt to both sides of it.
Oh yeah, man. Can we just take FIBA refs and say, hey, can we replace Scott Foster?
Well, let's watch a couple more games before we make a call like that.
But when it comes to USA, I think you can have your ears perked up a little bit. I'm not like full on. I still think they're the obvious favorites to win the whole thing, but I do think it's fascinating just to watch them play against. I watched some of that Nigeria game and just to see the energy and the passion that Nigeria is playing with. And it's like, okay, like we got to have that. And I think eventually they will get that whenever they get to Tokyo. But just I'm really just looking at the field, like who's going to give them that, who's going to have the real chance at getting a medal in Tokyo. It's like, so Slovenia, after Luka, his games to qualify and all that stuff, it's like, will Slovenia get a medal? And I think naturally, if you've like keeping up with any type of international basketball at all, you're like, okay, fun story, but really, will he really get a medal? I don't know, because other teams. And you start looking at it, it's like, well, who's the other teams that's going to medal besides USA? I mean, you're looking at France. I mean, France is going to bring back those guys. You're looking at Gobert, Batum, and like they have a lot of NBA guys, but Spain's always there. Spain's always like a juggernaut, and the Gasol brothers and Rudy Fernandez, Sergio, like all those guys. You still have Australia, who, I mean, they just beat the United States last night. So, and then I think on the outside, do you put Slovenia in that group just because of Luka? I think some people listen to this podcast will, but I put them just on the outside, like the fun teams, Slovenia, Nigeria. I think there's another team I'm forgetting that I have in that next group, but is there a chance that Luka and Slovenia walk out of Tokyo with the medal? I really think they could. And I think that first round, like I think they're better than Argentina. And I think that first group matchup between Slovenia and Spain, I'm fascinated by. Sign me up. I'm so excited for that game.
Every year we have like international basketball where these teams, like these country teams, put teams together and send guys out there. Like, the identity of your team is so important, right? When it falls into line, when it's, okay, Kobe's the guy and we're all falling in line after him. They have Durant, but I don't know if this team is necessarily like, we're going to all fall in line. It seemed like that they were just giving it to Damian Lillard, like, go bail us out in the fourth quarter kind of deal. Yeah. And I think with Slovenia, obviously they have Luka, and then everyone else falls in line after that and knows your spot, and you're running through one guy. I think it's easier on an international stage like that because you're not going to have a ton of time to practice. You're going in there, you're going to play like less than 20 total games or something like that between the exhibition and then the actual games and stuff. Like, you don't get a lot of time to try and get that teamwork stuff together. And so if you've had some guys that played together and then you have one guy that you can just run stuff through, I think that's an advantage. So I think Slovenia could come away with a medal. And of course, we're gonna be your Slovenia coverage right here. Everyone else is gonna be covering USA basketball, and we'll talk about USA basketball every once in a while. But we'll have at least some coverage post game after Slovenia games. So we'll
USA stuff is weird to me. Weird's probably not the right word, but they just have so many ISO guys. And I don't want to be that guy that's, after these two losses, that's really dissecting Team USA roster and be like,
they're not going to medal.
Like, okay, come on, guys. Like, these are all stars. Like,
it's an exhibition too, and they just came off of the season. Like, there's so many like factors to go into this.
Exactly. Now, if they're rolling out Kevin Love for 35 minutes, I would be like, okay, there's a big problem right now. Exactly. There you go. But the only thing that's just weird to me is they just have all these ISO guys. And even in the starting lineup, it's like Lillard, Brad Beal, Kevin Durant, Jason Tatum. Like, it's so many of these guys are so accustomed to like just having the ball, go create your shot, do your own thing. And I mean, they have Draymond, they have Bam, they have a couple of those guys. But even if you took out, I think the Damian Lillard spot is the one spot that I think they could look at and say, if you swapped out Damian Lillard with Chris Paul or like a tradition, like a non-score first point guard, I think that would do wonders for this USA team. And it's not a knock towards Dame. It's just Dame's style. What Dame's best at is scoring the basketball. But that's also what Kevin Durant and Jason Tatum and Brad Beal, all these other guys are best at too. So I still think they win the whole thing. I think they get goal. Like I'm not doubting that, but it is funny seeing all the fiery takes after 2 losses.
2016 starting 5 for Team USA. Do you remember what it was?
2016?
Yeah, that was the last time they had the Olympics.
No.
Kevin Durant, Carmelo, Kyrie, Klay Thompson, except for 2 games, DeMarcus Cousins, except for 3 games. And then DeAndre Jordan, Paul George also started a couple games in there. Like, that's a bunch of ISO guys too. So like, eventually the talent will pan out and Team USA will win games. Coming off the bench, they had Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, Barnes, DeRozan, Green. Remember we did all that stuff for Barnes?
Yeah.
When Harrison Barnes went?
When he made it. Also, shout out to the reporter who stood his ground with Pop after the game.
Joe Varden.
Was that him?
I think it was.
Oh, I thought it was like an Australian reporter.
Maybe it was somebody else. I saw Joe Varden and Pop were getting into it.
Well, anyway, I thought the reporter was right. And yeah, Pop just didn't Pop's shtick is it's been old for me for a while, but some people really enjoy it.
There you go. So the takeaway from this all is that basketball is different. FIBA and international rules and the NBA, right? It's just changed a lot. Whatever you think about it, it's different. And Luka's a genius because he can navigate both flawlessly. That's the take, right? I mean,
let's go.
Fine with that. Coming up, let's get into Spencer Dinwiddie. We'll break it all down, do the full free agency breakdown to see if he's an option for the Mavericks, because he's probably one of our top free agents as far as realistic options for the Mavs. So this one is really important. We'll get into it. But we got to name a Michelob Ultra Player of the Week, Isaac Harris. Let's start throwing out some options. Who is your Michelob Ultra Player of the Week nominee? It can be Mavs. It could be NBA. It could be anybody. The first one may have to go to Precious Achiuwa, right? Like, for that block on Kevin Durant. I mean, just that was an incredible block, even though he's a Miami Heat. Like, what an incredible block he had.
I'm going to go with Jamal Mosley. Hats off to him, landing the job. And I'll go a step further and be like, even the highlight clip that surfaced on Twitter over this past week of his playing days.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say the one with him and LeBron.
No, of how hyped he was as a basketball player. And after his dunks, he would do these celebrations. I had never seen that clip before, so I was super excited about that, watching that. But just super excited for him just to get that start in Orlando. We've talked about it multiple times. And even Rick Carlisle doing an interview with The Athletic today, giving praise to Jamal Mosley, said a bunch of things about he's a leader and everything. So
sure didn't want him to be the Mavs coach.
Yeah, you guys can read that.
Another nominee, we had Nico. This is from Dwayne Price on Twitter. Everybody follows Dwayne. Nico Harrison, Jason Kidd in the building for the Dallas Mavericks. Whichever player you want to take, Jason Kidd, Nico Harrison, they're in there. They're in the building for the Dallas Mavericks. I think that may garner a player of the week as well. So there you go. I think we'll go Jamal Mosley. I think that's probably our winner there of the week. Brought us enjoyment, brought us excitement. I love seeing the clip of him yelling F you at LeBron on the bench back when he was on the Heat. That was a great clip that was surfacing too. That brought me joy. That brought me happiness. Just like Michelob Ultra, it's only worth it if you enjoy it. Joy creates success. So hopefully Jamal Mosley has all the success in the world, except for when they play the Mavericks. There you go. Also, I want to tell you about Theragun. Theragun is a rhythmic percussive therapy device that releases your deepest muscle tension using a scientifically calibrated combo of depth, speed, and power, and it's as quiet as an electric toothbrush. Don't let the stress of daily life weigh on your body, whether you're an elite athlete or someone like us that's something more than an elite athlete. The Gen 4 Theragun doesn't just feel good, it gets the source of the pain by releasing tension using Theragun's signature percussive therapy, which goes 60% deeper. If you've listened to Locked On NBA on Fridays, we did this ad, and my co-host there, Adam Mares, has one of these, and he swears by it. He says if there was a fire in his house and he had to run out and get like 3 items, this would be one of the items that he would go grab, is this Theragun. So he swears by it. Go get it. You can get it for 30 days starting at $199. You can try it for free for 30 days. Go to Theragun.com/lockedon right now. Get your Gen 4 Theragun today. That's Theragun.com/lockedon. Theragun.com/lockedon. All right, Isaac Harris, let's get into Spencer Dinwiddie, our free agency profile, the 6'5 guard. He's 28 years old, and he's had a really interesting last couple of seasons. Save the contract stuff with the Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, whatever he was trying to do, selling his contract as an NFT, like whatever he was trying to do before. Besides that, he's had a really interesting last couple of years. So he came into the NBA with the Detroit Pistons and was kind of a fringe guy. Played in some G League, didn't really get to play a lot. Then came into Brooklyn. He still didn't play a ton, but he got in there like 20 minutes a game or so. And then he just started moving up the ranks with this young Brooklyn Nets team till eventually he became a guy that they really relied on. And in 2019-20, when the Brooklyn Nets had Kyrie Irving, Kyrie missed a bunch of games, Spencer Dinwiddie became the go-to scorer for that team, and he averaged 20 points a game in 64 games, playing just about 31 minutes. And that was a season where they didn't play all 82 games. So 64 games, it's not like he missed a bunch of games there. But averaged 20 points a game, just about 7 assists per game. And he was almost an all-star, right? Like you had a quote that, what was the quote that you pulled that someone called him an all-star?
Oh, well, Kobe told him that he was an all-star in his book, and he was really, really close to being an all-star that year because, like you said, with Kyrie being out for so long, KD was out, Karis LeVert was out, and that Nets team, they were like a fringe playoff team. They ended up making the playoffs, and they were like the fun playoff team there for everybody to root for. But Spencer Dinwiddie was the guy who took up the scoring load on that, and it was like he had to be the focal point of the offense, and he kept them really afloat all year.
Yeah, so Spencer Dinwiddie, really interesting guy. He had a player option coming up for this season. It's been widely reported, I think even by him, that he's going to turn down this deal. There's been quotes from him that say he's going to turn down this deal. So he's going to be an unrestricted free agent. So he's one of the guys that fits our criteria of being a secondary creator. Would you call him a veteran? I'm not sure I'd call him a veteran just yet. Like he's another
like a Kyle Lowry vet.
Right. He's another one of these guys. He's, like you said, he's 28. He's been in the NBA now for just about like 7 seasons, but he's kind of bounced from Detroit to the Brooklyn Nets, and then he was kind of riding the bench. So like he's been around a little bit, I guess. So a little bit of a veteran there, kind of like Josh Richardson to me.
Yeah, as far as age-wise, he's older than Giannis and Embiid and Marcus Smart, but he's younger than Austin Rivers, Trey Burke, DeLon Wright, Oladipo, and Harrison Barnes. He's younger than all those guys.
Interesting.
Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and he's in his prime, and like a Mavs like 3 or 4 year deal, like a 3 or 4 year contract, he would be right in the sweet spot of his prime, right? So you wouldn't really worry too much about a deal like that as far as age. However, there is a couple of concerns because he is coming off of an ACL injury. He tore his ACL, and so this is kind of a big question mark going into this offseason for him. Will he get the type of money that he's wanting because of this injury history? And because of missing that whole last season, because of that torn ACL, what does that mean? How is he going to look when he comes back?
Yeah, I think you have the quote that he gave Howard Beck, about his contract stuff.
Quote, I'll go back to the Nets if they give me 5 years, $125 million.
That's a quote. Because, it's like, what's his value? Like the last time we saw him at this high level of basketball for him, his peak of his career so far was that 2019-20 season that he averaged 20, all the stuff that we talked about, near all-star, everything. Then he plays 3 games this season and he tears his ACL. And it's like, I was so curious to see what his role would look like on this Nets team because
he was going to be 6th man of the year for me.
Yeah, like 6th man. It's like, would he buy into that? Like he just came off a season where he was the main guy, offense going through him a ton, 20 points a game. Now it's, hey, we have all these guys around you. So he tears his ACL 3 games in. Now he's declining a $12.3 million player option, hitting free agency, saying, I will go back if they give me $25 million a year for 5 years. So where's his head at? What does he think he is right now? Does he think he is 2019-20, I want to be the focal point of an offense? Or is he looking at like fit, money, whatever it is? You would assume he expects to be a starter wherever he goes, and he would start in Dallas if he came here. But I'm just fascinated to see like what he thinks of himself right now.
Yeah, that's going to be a really interesting part of it. I do feel like he's sort of a guy that would be a team player, though, right? Just from I'm not sure that there's anything that we've read or seen that would suggest that he's like I'm a definite starter, and if I'm not, then maybe to me he seems in the vein of Tim Hardaway Jr. Tim Hardaway Jr. wants to be a starter, but if he did come off the bench and it was a good situation and all that, like I think he would go for it and he would be a team player in that scenario. Like from everything that we've read about him, it seems like that. But that's just me speculating. That's just me guessing. He could be super diva behind the scenes. Who knows, right? Like, we've known cryptocurrency divas in the past in the Mavs organization.
What is the percentage that Bob and Spencer has already talked?
This was my thing. Like when the whole Bob Voulgaris story was coming out, the only free agent that might be a positive, like Bob Voulgaris' involvement might be a positive, is Spencer Dinwiddie because of all the back and forth knowledge they can share about cryptocurrency and all that kind of stuff that they can talk about. But we don't know if Bob's still involved. That's still a question we don't have that we'll probably ask on Thursday, which, by the way, Thursday is going to be the press conference with Nico Harrison and Jason Kidd and Stint Marshall and probably Mark Cuban. And I think everybody's going to be out there. Everybody except for Donnie Nelson and Rick Carlisle are going to be there to announce this new Mavericks, basically. The
new chapter, yeah.
So, yeah, Spencer Dinwiddie, what is he going to be? What does he want to be? He would fill a couple things for the Mavericks. He would be that secondary creator. He'd bring some size to the Mavericks for sure. And he'd be that other scorer type guy that can create and also create his own shot. I think those are big things that he can bring to this Dallas Mavericks team that would be important. So coming up, let's dive into a bunch of stats. Let's dive into some of the things, maybe some misconceptions, and then figure out how he would fit and his availability and how the Mavs could actually make this happen and why they would want to make this happen and why they wouldn't want to make this happen with Spencer Dinwiddie. So here we go. Quickly, let me tell you about rockauto.com. With the ever-increasing number of makes and models of cars, so many different kinds. Why would you want to go to a place that has limited capacity for parts? You go there, you have to see if they have the part that you want. If they don't have it, they go back into the back to see if they have it in the back room, and then they don't, and they come back and they order it on the computer. And you could have just done that from your house, saved all that time, just ordered it and got it sent to your place. You can even get parts, and I've heard people do this before where they get parts and they either rent a space, like a garage type space where they can put the part on themselves, or they take the part to the mechanic and like, hey, if you know the mechanic well enough, like, hey, here's the part, put it on my car, right? Like there's certain places that'll do that for you. So save money on the parts, save money on that by getting them at rockauto.com. Save time and money using rockauto.com. They're reliably low. All the prices on there are the same for professionals and do-it-yourselfers. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck right in Locked On. And they're How Did You Hear About Us box. They know that we sent you. Again, rockauto.com. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. All right, Isaac Harris, let's dive into some Spencer Dinwiddie stats. So we mentioned before his best season was last season, 2019-20. So I guess the season before this past season. 20.6 points a game, 6.8 assists per game. And he shot just about 42% from the field, which is kind of questionable. Just about 31% from three, and then 78% from the line. His efficiency numbers as far as shooting were not great, but the counting numbers were there. He was asked to be this number one guy a lot of the time. He was asked to create his own shot a lot. There was not somebody else creating for him at all. And even when the guys were back, it was like Kyrie Irving and Karis LeVert, right? These are not like all-time creators or even point guards at all, basically. They're these shoot-first guys as well. But he kind of ramped up into that. When he started with Brooklyn, he averaged like 7 points a game in just about 22 minutes. And then it was 12 minutes and 28 minutes. And then he upped that to 16.8 when he was kind of a sixth man for Brooklyn. And then up to that 20 point per game season. So you and I both dived into that 20 point per game season. When sometimes like, okay, he averaged 20 and 7. Those sound like great numbers, but what does that actually mean? On top of what we just talked about with FIBA basketball and the NBA, where scoring is encouraged and all scoring is up and all that kind of stuff, and the rules are different. Like, what did you think about Spencer Dinwiddie's numbers when you dove into them? That may not, like, the whole story may not be 20 and 7.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to also note that they were winning. Like, they were above 500 team when he was putting up those numbers too. And because I think we look at those counting stat things, and this phrase gets thrown out a lot, but good stats, bad team guy. And I think it would be different if Dinwiddie was averaging 20 and 7 on a team at the bottom of the league. You're like, oh, look at those numbers. But they were winning. Like he was making the most of that team and running that offense. He has good pick and roll numbers with Jared Allen that season. Isolation that season when he was ISO'd with the ball.
They were 30 and 34 when he played on that Brooklyn Nets team.
Okay, roughly 500 without
just
missing
about
those
under
guys.
500, but
yeah, with missing Kyrie, Kevin Durant and Karis LeVert for a lot of that season.
Well, Kevin Durant was still with Golden State, but anyway.
Really?
Right? No, he was there. He was there, but he was hurt.
He was hurt.
Right?
Yeah.
Never mind.
He was hurt.
Forget I said that.
But when you look at isolation numbers that season,
You idiot.
That was for me.
Points per game, minimum of 200 isolation possessions. These are the guys better than Spencer Dinwiddie, James Harden, Damian Lillard, Kawhi Leonard, Luka Doncic, Jason Tatum, Chris Paul, then Spencer Dinwiddie.
Dang.
Top 7 guy in isolation scoring, points per game, minimum of 200 possessions. Do you want to know how many possessions James Harden had that season? 958 isolation.
I was looking at isolation too, and I was like, okay, let's do a minimum of 2 isolations per game, and there was like 40 or something guys, and James Harden was at 14. I was like, good lord.
He's the outlier though, because the other guys on the list had like in the low 200s, like Chris Paul and Tatum, some of these guys. But anyway, it just goes to show you, especially in a Maverick sense, we want a guy who's going to come, if he's going to come play alongside Luka in the backcourt, we also want a guy who can create their own shot, that you can, when Luka steps off the floor, is on the bench, that we can say, can you run the offense? Can you get us a bucket? Can you like just score? We need another guy who can score and create for themselves. And I think in that sense, I'm not worried about that. Spencer Dinwiddie at 6'5", 6'8", 6'9" wingspan, we could run the offense through him when Luka's off the floor. I have my other hesitations, but that's not one of them.
Yeah, let's do a couple more positives here. On isolation attempts, like you said, he averaged 24% of his isolation attempts ended with him shooting free throws. That was the most in the league, with a minimum of 2 isolation attempts per game. Like, that was massive. He gets to the free throw line a lot. He creates contact. He gets to the line. That's something positive. Him and Luka both do that. He also barely ever turned it over. He averaged turnovers on 5.4% of his ISOs. So that was really low in the league too. I think that was like bottom 5 with that minimum of 2 isolation attempts per game. So he doesn't turn it over. He gets to the free throw line. So in that way, he's efficient though. Like, his shots after that are not as efficient. We'll get into that in some negatives, but he gets to the line. He doesn't turn it over. He does score on these ISOs. He scores in the pick and roll. He just can do all that kind of stuff. And I think that's a thing that you want, right? Somebody that can score, and then also he'll create for others too. Those 7 assists per game, like we said, came out of all these isolations and pick and roll and drives and all that kind of stuff. Let's go into some of our concerns or weaknesses. I have one here. I just mentioned the isolation, like the positives. He also only shot 36.6% on field goals off of isolation attempts. So he did get to the line, but when he didn't get to the line, he like missed 60% of his shots, 65% of his shots, all that. So I think that is a big negative. His field goal percentage in general that last season was really, really low. And we haven't even mentioned his 3-point shooting yet.
Yeah, his 3-point shooting is my main hesitation, because when you're going to add anybody around Luka Doncic, that's always going to be the conversation that you have, like, okay, can he hit the 3? He hasn't, I think 33% was the highest he's ever been in his career. And that was like 3 or 4 years ago, 31% last year.
On high volume, yeah.
Yeah, on high volume. So 29% on step back threes, which you're not really asking a ton of, that from him probably. The only encouraging thing about it is according to Synergy, his catch and shoot, unguarded catch and shoot shots, he shot 45% on those shots.
That's great.
Yeah, so that's good, because you want a guy who can just stand there and catch the ball, shoot the ball.
Sometimes, yeah.
But in a perfect world, if you're saying, hey, what's the perfect guy next to Luka, you would want them to be a better, 3-point shooter, and all of that. So now, will Spencer Dinwiddie, like, how does he look alongside of Luka Doncic, playing alongside when the offense is not focused on him to where he's playing off ball? There's other stats too, of like when he played with Kyrie, they had over 300 minutes together, a 120 offensive rating. There's some deeper stats on that, like, possessions in which he caught passes from Kyrie coming off screens and stuff, and his percentage was much higher shooting the 3 with those. So what does he look like playing alongside of a guy like Luka? Will his percentages be better? I think so, but do I think he's going to be, Craig Hodges? No, I don't.
We've been down this road before. I've been hurt before by will his 3-point shooting be better next to Luka?
Also, if you know who Craig Hodges is, send me a tweet because that was a really deep dive right there.
That whole thing that you just said about him being better totally reminds me of the Josh Richardson conversation we had when that trade first went down. And like, you hope that it's better, right? He's definitely a better guy with the ball for sure.
Is he
like
the upgrade?
Like we're not gonna compare these two because they're just different players. But that reminds me of, well, he could be better if blah blah blah, and then a lot of ifs have to go right for him to be better.
And defensively too. We didn't mention there's not I wouldn't say there's a extremely positive narrative around his defense that he
it's very clouded. There's a couple, I read a couple like Nets bloggers that said he was good on defense, and then everybody else who said it was like either he's fine or he's bad. Right? Like,
but at least he has size. It's not like he's composite out there. Okay, at least he's 6'5" with that 6'8", 6'9" wingspan.
A couple other weaknesses on pull-up shots: 29% field goals on pull-up shots and 27.7% on pull-up threes, and he took 3.9 per game in that season. So I mean that's a lot. He shot 31% from three, and he took 6.3 threes per game, and almost all of them were pull-up threes, and he just did not shoot well on those. That tells you that his catch and shoot was better, but that's a problem, because if you are asking him to create his own offense, create his own shot, he was not super efficient on that. Do things change in Dallas when he can play off of Luka? All that kind of stuff? Sure, it could, but that's not a big sign. That's not a good sign. Again, he's also coming off of an ACL injury. That's
big question. Biggest thing right now, yeah.
Big question mark right now. Do you want to have Dinwiddie that could be injury prone, that just is trying to recover off this, as well as Porzingis? Like, don't you want a sure thing there? That's a big question.
And like, what are you comfortable paying him? You haven't seen him since he played his third game this past season. He tore his ACL, and he's coming off the ACL. We know all that with KP. What are you willing to pay? Because combine that with the Nets comment that he said, hey, if they basically give me 25 a year for 5 years, I'll be back with the Nets. Also consider that he turned down the player option to 12.3. So what does he want? Like, is he expecting 20 million a year from a team?
Somewhere between 12 and 25, right? We have parameters.
Yeah. So it's like, is he expecting, is he looking at a deal like Bogdan Bogdanovic? I mean, this was a 3+1 deal for Bogdanovic in Atlanta at 18 million a year. Is that something that he wants? Is that something he will settle for in his mind? Is that something that Dallas would give him coming off an ACL, being a player who isn't a knockdown 3-point shooter? All right, like, how do you feel about that? Like, if you had to hand 20 million a year to John Collins or Spencer Dinwiddie, who are you handing it to? Like, that's where, some people are like,
or Tim Hardaway Jr., right? Like, those are your options, right?
Yeah, like some people are like screaming at the screen, like the screen right now. If you're watching on YouTube, it's like, oh, I would pick this player, whoever it is. But like, that's what I'm so curious on what he wants, because even if you're the Nets, I think the Nets are going to say, hey, well, we want to sign and trade with wherever he goes, because they want to add to their team. They don't care about paying a luxury tax, but they don't want to lose him for nothing. If they could turn that into a sign and trade with the team, you're not going to tell me right now that the Nets wouldn't take Maxey and somebody else on that, Dwight Powell on that team. Dwight's better than DeAndre. So like
Jordan?
Yeah. They would take both those guys right now. I'm not saying Dallas would, but that's and if he doesn't get the long-term security, would he take a 1 year high money, prove it type deal? Like if Dallas came in and said, all right, we'll give you 1 year, 23. It's like, how would the fan base feel about that?
That would be tough, because the Mavs then, they would keep his rights. So you'd have to either hope that it really pays off for Spencer Dinwiddie, or you just lose him and then you don't have a way to replace that talent because you don't have the cap space because of Luka's big deal.
See, I wouldn't like that, because that would mean, if you're doing that deal, that means you're probably letting go of Tim Hardaway, and you're losing Tim Hardaway and risking losing Dinwiddie in a year. And then you have nothing of either one of those guys. So I'm not all out on Spencer Dinwiddie. I'm kind of on the fence about it. I think I'm more.
It feels a lot like John Collins, right? In a different way.
Yeah, in a different way.
DeRozan. It feels like DeRozan. The way we talked about DeRozan. It's like, okay, if you brought him in, you could see how it would work Dinwiddie would be less money than DeRozan. He would fill different roles, I think, but do similar things. And you're like, okay, I can talk myself into this.
It's also like what teams are going to go after Dinwiddie. Like I could see the Knicks going after him. I could see Miami going after him. Another reason we're talking about Dinwiddie too is I think it was actually in a report the other day. The New York Daily News, I think, said that the Mavericks had interest in it and added him before.
Those classic articles. The Mavs are showing interest in somebody. Like, oh, here we go.
Colorado guy knows Tyler Bay. Tyler Bay, when I talked to him after he got drafted, Tyler Bay was really talking up this Colorado brotherhood between the guys of him and Dinwiddie and Robertson. And the leader of that is Chauncey Billups. So I wonder if Billups will try to go get a Colorado guy at some point in Portland. But so yeah, he would have a connection here, and I think his fit next to Luka, he fits what even Mark Cuban said last week or 2 weeks ago, saying, hey, we need a guy who can help Luka out, take that offensive load off him, a bigger guy on the wing. Spencer Dinwiddie, like DeMar DeRozan, fits that bigger guy, 6'5", 6'6", bigger wingspan, who can create for himself. It's just a matter of how much are you willing to pay for a 28-year-old Dinwiddie who's never been an all-star, who's coming off a torn ACL. And are you ready to hand big time $20 million a year to Dinwiddie and pay combined $50 million a year to two guys in Porzingis and Dinwiddie who've torn their ACL? That would make a lot of people feel very uncomfortable.
This is me checking the comments, trying to see what people are saying.
That's a wild wasteland right there.
Shout out to everybody in the comments. What do you think about Spencer Dinwiddie? Let us know. Would you rather have Spencer Dinwiddie? Would you rather have DeMar DeRozan? Would you rather just keep Tim Hardaway Jr.? Those are kind of the options the Mavericks have right now.
There's a world, though. I will say there's a world that you could sign Dinwiddie and make it a sign and trade and still keep Tim. I think there's a world, because I don't think all the teams are going to be lining up, and I could be totally wrong on this. I don't think teams are going to be lining up to hand Dinwiddie $20 million a year. I just don't think.
Or Tim Hardaway.
Who will get more money, average annual money this offseason? I think Tim has more than Dinwiddie.
No, I think Dinwiddie will.
Interesting.
Well, yeah, I don't know.
Do you want to put a board bet on it?
We could put a board bet on it. I think also there's just so many of those guards, like we've mentioned before, the Evan Fourniers, the Reggie Jacksons. There's so many of those guards like that I don't know if the market for Tim Hardaway will be bounced up enough.
I just feel like everybody wants shooters, and Tim is a 40% three-point shooter.
Yeah, true.
Dinwiddie has to, he needs the ball. He's not a 40% three-point shooter. You say, hey, just run him off everybody. So that's why I'm curious to who goes after him. I ultimately think it is a sign and trade. I don't even think it, I don't see a really bad team going after Dinwiddie this offseason. I could see it if it's not in Miami or Dallas. I could see a team like the Clippers, whoever, saying, hey, we want Dinwiddie and we'll do a sign and trade and give you a piece or two so you can help your championship team in Brooklyn.
There you go. Guys, let us know what you think about Dinwiddie. We'll be back all week. Again, the presser's on Thursday. We'll have it all for you here on Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom.